This is Eagle Owl, and today I will be talking about Darius Slay. He believes this team is more balanced than the 2022 team. Also, we're going to talk about Joe Douglas. I'm hearing a lot of, oh, come back to Philly. He was a good scout or whatever. But I'm hearing he been dissing Howie Roseman on the low. We're going to talk about it. Lastly, Mailata, he continues to praise Nick Sirianni. But let's get straight into all right, man. So this one we're gonna hop straight into it. We're gonna talk about Darius Slay. I guess we talk about that one first. Darius Slay was on, I believe it's called Speak, or is it called Speak? The Facility. He was on the Facility with Shady and all them. I kind of like that show. I'm not gonna lie to y'all. I mean, Chase Daniels be saying some BS, but it's a debate show. I kind of like that show more than like the First Takes and all the other ones. I could sit and really watch that show. But Darius Slay was on there, and they asked him a few questions. They talked about Quinion, of course, just Darius Slay in general. They even picked fun at him with like James Jones mossing him in the past and whatever. But they mentioned something I wanted to know, at least from a player's like, what's the difference, or what do you guys see the difference between 2022 team that went to the Super Bowl and this team? And this is what Darius Slay had to say.
What's the difference between this year's Eagles team and the Eagles team that went to the Super Bowl?
Ooh, no, I say this team is way a lot more, balanced than the 2022 team because the fact that, if you are an Eagles player, the Eagles always been D-line driven. And, the D-line really kind of like carries the team. They set the tone. I think this whole team here in 2024 is a team. The defense is a whole tone setter instead of just like the D-line, even though we still command the D-line to set the tone because they are the front. But you can see it's kind of like more balanced, not guys that's sticking out with 15 sacks, 12 sacks, 13 sacks. We had a year with at least 5, 6 guys had over 10 sacks. So, that's D-line driven. Right now, I think we got a guys that all contribute in a good way, and we all just playing together.
I'm with Darius Slay, man. I'm with Darius Slay, and I've seen it with my own eyes as well. This team is more balanced. I would give it that for sure. Because 2022 team, my God, that pass rush was different. We talking about Josh Sweat gave you 10 sacks. Hassan Reddick gave you multiple sacks. Remember, Javon Hargrave got 10 sacks himself. Fletcher Cox was playing at a high level. But the questionable thing on that team, the number one question is, can that secondary get it done? Like CJ Gardner-Johnson was playing at a high level at that time, but everybody else was like, we get exposed and that pass rush don't get there. We got some huge problems, and it reared this ugly head. Mind you, Bradbury and Slay had a good year, but we all seen it. We was like, yo, yeah, Jonathan Gannon defense is ranked is this because, the defensive line. But if you watch the Eagles, that 2022 season, every single game, we like, that defense got a problem. And if it get exposed, we can lose. And unfortunately, it came in the biggest game where so the field was slippery. Shout out to Fieldgate. And the defense got exposed. But whereas though, if that's happened to this defense, I think we beat the Kansas City Chiefs because I believe in the linebackers a little more. And shout out to TJ Edwards, who's been cooking. And I believe in the coaching staff. I believe in the coaching staff a lot more, like actually Vic Fangio instead of Jonathan Gannon. So yeah, man, I agree with Slay. I 1000% agree with Slay. Now let's talk about Joe Douglas. Joe Douglas was fired from the Jets. He was a really good scout, really good guy that helped Howie Roseman with a couple drafts. But to me, since Douglas left, I believe Howie got better. And Douglas did some good things drafting with the Jets. I like Braylon Allen, the running back. They, of course, Garrett Wilson did a really good job. Sauce Gardner. Like, it's more and more and more guys he did a good job with. But the one thing or the two things he really failed at with the Jets is free agents. I don't think he handled free agency right, especially with the Hassan Reddick thing, just completely fumbled that. And then the quarterback situation. Like, come on, man. Everybody seen that Aaron Rodgers was on his last leg and y'all gave him a shot and y'all basically let him run the organization. You overpaid for Devontae Adams, the old Devontae Adams. And look, man, It's just not looking good in New York. And Joe Douglas had his hand in that. Again, he had some really good drafts, but he wasn't that great to me handling free agency, in my opinion. He could have took a thing or two from Howie Roseman, just a thing or two. So after the firing and whatever, a reporter from New York or New Jersey, I should say, just completely aired out Joe Douglas and was like, "Yeah, Joe Douglas, he he really hated the Hurts pick and he would mock Howie Roseman." And then there was a scout guy named Patrick Stewart who is now with the Patriots. They wanted Uchich, the linebacker, and then we went with Jalen Hurts. And then again, these dudes like Joe Douglas and the Patrick Stewart guy, they were bit leakers to the press. And this dude completely aired it out, kept the post up for like an hour and then deleted it. If that is true, that they was like, leaking stuff, talking down on Howie Roseman and what he did, and Joe Douglas had his hand in that, there's no way you could bring him back. Because we talking about the franchise quarterback, and we know how Jalen Hurts felt about it. Like, he let his emotions out to me when we went to the Super Bowl. He's like, yeah, it was people in this building that didn't want me here. And the press was trying to get something out of it. He wasn't gonna name anybody, but he's like, nah, it was people that didn't want me here. And I will say this, to be fair to Joe Douglas, I would say almost 80 to 90% of the fan base did not want Jalen Hurts, because not that Jalen Hurts is a bad guy or a bad player, just at the time it just didn't make sense. And I get what Joe Douglas and these guys were thinking, like, this don't make sense. You just paid Carson Wentz, let him, go through his motions and see if we could get through it. And Howie Roseman was ahead of the curve, like, nah, let's get the quarterback now and let's get him in the second round, which he did. Because a lot of people thought Jalen Hurts was going to go third or fourth. But he's like, nah, let's get him here. Forget everybody else you guys talking about. We're going to get Jalen Hurts here. And the rest is history. Like, Jalen Hurts, since he's been the starter, been in the playoffs, to me, he's a better teammate than Carson Wentz. Will he ever had the arm talent of Carson Wentz? Probably not. I would say this, his deep ball is really, really good. But Carson Wentz, it was just the intangibles. And we've seen the things that happened in Indianapolis and then Washington and stuff like that. And it seemed like these days Carson Wentz have humbled himself. You see he's a backup to Patrick Mahomes. But again, you can't bring back Joe Douglas if any of this is true, that he was leaking stuff. He talked down on Howie Roseman, really hated the Jalen Hurts pick. It just wouldn't make sense. It would just cause a bunch of controversy. It would feel like the Matt Patricia thing. Like how Matt Patricia and Darius Slay didn't really get along, but you bring in Matt Patricia. If you bring in Joe Douglas, I mean, if this is true, Howie Roseman not going to really like him. Jalen Hurts probably going to give him the cold shoulder like, bro, you ain't even want me here. Why are you here? Or whatever. So it just wouldn't work bringing Joe Douglas in my opinion, if any of this is true. But Joe Douglas, man, he know how to drive. But I will say this again. He's been wrong on quarterbacks. He drafted Zach Wilson, wrong. Aaron Rodgers, wrong. He was wrong on Jalen Hurts. So I'm just saying, he know how to get the skill guys, but don't know about drafting quarterbacks and getting quarterbacks right. Joe Douglas has been wrong on that. So again, if any of this is true, you can't bring them back. You just can't do it. But let's talk about some positive news. Let's talk about Jordan Mailata. Jordan Mailata continues to praise Nick Sirianni. Jordan Mailata was asked again about like that meeting and changing things up and getting things right. And this is what Mailata had to say.
It wasn't like a demand. It was just having a conversation, being truthful, being honest. There was no foul intent or anything in the conversation. And kudos to Coach Sirianni because of the culture that he was, coaching in order for us to go up to him and have this conversation.
Shout out to Jordan Mailata. And before I talk about what he had to say, I mean, no pressure zone. I don't know what to call it, but shout out to Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata coming back from that hamstring injury. Did not allow no pressures against the Washington Commanders. Got to salute him for that. He did a really, really good job. We know Lane Johnson is Lane Johnson. And again, shout out to Jordan Mailata. And again, Jordan Mailata seemed like a team guy, and Jordan Mailata will keep it real. He's not one of those PR type guys. Like, I believe him when he said he really liked Nick Sirianni. He talked to Nick Sirianni. So he's one of the guys like, okay, this thing is true. This thing is real. But that's all I got for you guys today. And hey, man, what do you think? How do you feel about everything? Darius Slay, do you agree? Joe Douglas, am I reaching on that? Do y'all actually want to bring him back? I don't know about that. And again, Jordan Mailata, this is Eagle Owl, man. I'm up.